We are just swimming in information all the time about the future of money. And honestly, it can be a dizzying landscape.
We really can.
On one side, you hear all these whispers, sometimes even shouts, about systems that promise this revolutionary liberation. You know, the terms NESARA, the quantum financial system, or QFS.
The white hat solutions.
Exactly. They're framed as these perfect fixes designed to just, poof, erase all debt and kick off a new age of prosperity for everyone. And the packaging is always, it's all about hope, you know, very powerful emotional branding.
It's very compelling.
Then on the complete other side of that conversation, you hear about these highly centralized systems that sound like they're straight out of a dystopian novel.
Right, the cautionary tales.
And that's where you get the talk about central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. And that immediately brings up fears of, you know, total government surveillance, money you can be told how to spend.
Programmable money.
Yes, and the ability to be financially excluded just instantly.
Click of a button.
It really feels like we're being presented with this absolute choice, right? It's either utopian freedom or it's total digital tyranny. But what if I told you that, according to the analysis we're digging into today, the actual structure, the wiring diagram for both the dream and the nightmare is often the exact same? Okay, let's unpack this.
This is the critical point.
Today, we are analyzing some excerpts from a scientific analyst, Justin Lake, and his work focuses purely on the architecture of financial power, not the marketing slogans.
Which is a crucial distinction.
It is. Lake provides this really surgical analysis that, honestly, it demands a kind of radical intellectual discipline from us. He insists, and he's very clear on this, that we have to immediately ignore the names, ignore the political claims, who's a good guy, who's a bad guy, and focus on one thing and one thing only.
The underlying structure of control. The design itself.
Exactly. So our mission for you, the listener, is to give you a genuine shortcut here. This deep dive is all about delivering that aha moment, that moment where you can cut through all the noise, bypass years of political debate, and just instantly see the functional reality behind any financial proposal, no matter who claims they're holding the remote control.
What's fascinating here is the the scientific rigor that the source applies to this. Lake's core instruction is so clear, and it's also incredibly challenging for anyone who's, really invested in these debates.
It really is.
He says, forget the names, forget the emotional marketing. We are being explicitly told to ignore any and all language about love, light, and unicorn ascension.
Right.
Because that language, he argues, is specifically designed to activate the emotional centers of trust in our brains. It makes us less likely to actually look under the hood and examine the mechanisms of power.
And just so we're all on the same page, since these terms can carry a lot of political weight, when we talk about CBDCs, what we're referring to are these proposed, centrally managed, digital versions of a country's currency, issued and controlled directly by a central bank.
The official sector's proposal.
Yes. And then when we mention QFS and NESARA, we're talking about concepts that their supporters describe as, revolutionary, supposedly decentralized global financial systems. They're designed to redistribute wealth, create financial freedom, and they're often tied into some very specific geopolitical narratives.
Exactly. And Lake's analysis is designed specifically to test those claims, to test the idea of decentralization and freedom that these systems promise against their actual architectural reality.
And that architectural reality is everything. Lake's point is that when you're analyzing power, especially financial power, who is holding the switch, their identity, their stated good intentions, it's all just a distraction.
A total distraction.
If the architecture itself grants absolute power, that power will eventually be used. The most critical variable is the system's capacity. So we're basically throwing away the glossy brochures and demanding to see the engineering schematics.
That's a great way to put it. And those schematics, they lead us right to the core of Lake's analytical method, which he calls the principle of structural identity. It's so simple, but as you said, it's just devastating in its implication for so many of these movements.
So the core thesis is, it's this. Two systems are structurally identical if they share the same control requirements. Full stop.
Period.
It just doesn't matter if one is pitched as liberation and the other is pitched as tyranny. If the blueprints, the actual functional requirements are the same, then the system of control you get at the end is the same.
And this, the source argues, is how you save an immense amount of time and energy. You bypass all of those emotional, circular debates that go nowhere.
It really allows for an instant pivot. You go from what, philosophical speculation?
To functional reality. Lake puts it very bluntly. You don't need to debate who the good guys are. You only need to compare the architecture.
So you're analyzing the system based on its capacity for supervision.
Exactly, not its promise of benevolence. If System A gives its controller 5 specific tools of absolute financial supervision, and System B also gives its controller those exact same 5 tools, well, then the systems are functionally interchangeable. It doesn't matter what flag they're flying.
Okay, so let's get into those 5 structural requirements that Lake lays out. Because if any system, I don't care what you call it, meets these 5 points, the source says it is fundamentally a system of custody and control. This is what structural control actually means in a digital world.
All right. The first one is the foundation. It's the prerequisite for everything else. It's a central authority that manages the currency.
A single control
A
point.
single control point, or at least a single identifiable group that holds the keys. The keys to the ledger, the keys to the money supply.
And in a truly, a free, decentralized system, that power is spread out.
It's diffused. It's spread across millions of individual transactions and economic actors. But the second you introduce a singular authority, and it doesn't matter if you call it the Federal Reserve, a multinational consortium, a quantum algorithm overseen by a council.
Or even a group of self-proclaimed white hats.
Exactly. The moment that exists, you have architecture that allows for centralization, and that instantly creates what's called counterparty risk.
Meaning your financial well-being isn't just up to you anymore.
Precisely. It means your financial standing is no longer purely dependent on your own economic choices and activities. It's now also dependent on the continuing, benevolent, and crucially error-free operation of that single authority. It's the single point of failure, and it's the single point of enforcement.
And that centralization, that single point, it feeds right into the second requirement. This is where control moves from just broad management to something much more granular.
Yes. The second requirement is programmable or permission-based digital money.
This is a huge leap, isn't it? From money just being a way to exchange value.
It's a fundamental shift. It turns currency as a universal medium of exchange into currency as a targeted, rule-bound instrument.
I think we need to spend a moment here because this is where the behavioral enforcement part gets really real for people.
It is. Programmable money allows that central authority to dictate when, where, and crucially, how your money can be used.
So my dollar isn't just a dollar anymore. It's more like a coupon with a bunch of terms and conditions attached.
A coupon is a perfect analogy. The funds could be programmed, for example, with an expiration date. You have to spend it by Friday or it vanishes.
Which forces you to spend, right, to maintain economic velocity.
Of course. Or they could be restricted by location. These funds only work within a 50-mile radius of your home. Or they could be restricted by product type.
And Lake implies that the ultimate goal here is even more direct. It's tying your spending to social or political compliance.
That's the most contentious application, absolutely. Imagine a system where, say, your access to buy gasoline is throttled because you've exceeded some kind of environmental compliance score.
Or maybe funds you get from, I don't know, a universal basic income program can only be spent on certain approved domestically produced goods.
Exactly. So the control is no longer passive. It's not just monitoring after the fact. It becomes active, dynamic restriction. The system itself is dictating not just how much money you have, but what kind of societal role you are allowed to play with that money.
And none of that can work. None of it is possible unless the system knows exactly who is holding that programmable money.
Which brings us neatly to the third requirement.
Identity verification tied to accounts, the end of anonymity.
The system has to permanently and infallibly link every single transaction, every movement of funds, no matter how tiny, to a specific verified identity.
I think the loss of anonymity is. It's something people really underestimate.
Oh, massively. Financial privacy is a bedrock of political freedom. Without the ability to transact anonymously, even for small things, you lose the ability to, say, organize political dissent.
Or fund unpopular causes.
Or even just engage in commerce that the central authority might not like, even if that commerce is perfectly legal today. Who knows what they'll disapprove of tomorrow?
So once every action is tied to a specific identity using a digital ID or biometrics,
Or just a unique account number linked to a central registry?
the ability for you to just pool resources with your neighbors or engage in any private economic activity outside the view of that central ledger, it just vanishes.
It's gone. The purpose here isn't just to audit for financial crimes like tax evasion. It's to audit compliance with much broader behavioral mandates.
Okay, so you have the identity link. That brings us to number 4, continuous transaction monitoring. The system is always watching, always using that identity link.
Right. And this isn't like your bank sending you a statement once a month. The source is very clear on this. This has to be instantaneous, real-time, comprehensive surveillance of all economic activity.
So the system isn't just built to record things.
No, it's built to analyze, to flag, and most importantly, to score your behavior continuously.
It's like a financial panopticon that's operating 24/7.
Yeah.
Every single thing you do feeds into this algorithmic scoring mechanism.
Every single thing. Did you buy a book that's on a disruptive media list? Did you donate to an organization that got flagged yesterday? Did you make too many cash withdrawals this week?
And if the system has this continuous monitoring, every choice, every single action contributes to a profile of you. A profile that can then determine your access to financial services, or even your access to the economy itself.
And that profile then dictates whether you get rewards or you get penalties.
And that's the mechanism of penalty, isn't it? The fifth and final piece that completes this whole control loop.
This is the ultimate enforcement lever. The fifth requirement is the ability to freeze, limit, or deny access to funds.
And if a system has this lever, it means the central authority has the unilateral power to just turn your financial life off.
Or at least severely restrict it. And they
Yeah.
can do it without having to go through any of the traditional, often lengthy judicial processes.
No court order needed.
No court order needed. When you look at the whole architecture together, you have a central authority, that's point one,
Right.
managing programmable money, point two,
Which is tied to your verified identity, point 3.
and it's all being continuously monitored, point four.
Then the ability to freeze or deny your funds, point 5, becomes, it's not just a feature, it's an inevitable and necessary function to make the whole thing work, to ensure compliance.
That's what Lake argues. He says if a system can do this, the question of whether or not the people in charge right now intend to use it gently is almost irrelevant.
It's secondary to the fact that the architecture makes gentle use completely optional.
Exactly. It completes the control loop. It turns the entire system into a cage with a switch.
And this is the really profound synthesis that Lake offers us. He's saying, look, if system A, let's say that's the current centralized banking model as it evolves into a CBDC, if that meets these 5 points, and then system B, which is marketed as the liberating QFS, or NESARA, if that system also requires a central council, programmable money to distribute its funds, identity checks, continuous monitoring, and the ability to freeze accounts to enforce its new rules.
And the two systems are fundamentally, structurally, the same architecture of supervision.
So all the names, the claims of debt relief, the promises of liberation, they don't matter to the structure.
They're just marketing.
The structure is what determines the function. And if that structure allows for centralized monitoring, spending that requires permission, and the ultimate threat of being denied access, then you, the individual, are placed in the position of a subject. You're just perpetually reliant on the supervisor's goodwill.
It forces us, and you, the listener, to completely shift the cognitive focus. We have to stop asking, are the people running this system morally pure?
Right. Are they the good guys?
And instead, we have to start asking, does this system structure grant total unilateral power to anyone? Because if it does, Lake's conclusion is that the system is fundamentally architected for the supervision of a population, not its freedom, regardless of the controller's current intentions.
Okay, so to help us apply this kind of analysis in a practical way, Lake gives us a tool, a very specific distilled checklist of 5 core questions.
And it's designed to just instantly strip away all the branding and reveal the true nature of any financial system.
And the power of this tool is its universal application. The source is demanding that we use this neutral, scientific instrument on everyone.
No exceptions.
CBDCs, QFS, the Federal Reserve, the White Hats, the Space Elders, whoever it is that's promising a new financial dawn. There are no free passes.
Let's walk through these 5 control questions then, because the real analytical power here comes from understanding the specific mechanism of control that's hidden inside every yes answer.
Okay, let's do it.
The first question you should ask is, can someone else decide when you get your money?
The control mechanism here is about timing and distribution.
Exactly. Control over the timing of when you receive your funds fundamentally shifts the relationship. You go from being autonomous to being in a state of managerial dependence.
And this is about more than just getting paid a salary on the first of the month.
Right. Oh, much more. Imagine a system where the funds that are promised to you are tied to these big macroeconomic levers. In the name of, say, curbing inflation, A central scheduler could just delay the release of funds to everyone.
Or they could restrict them to certain sectors of the economy to try and redirect labor or resources.
Precisely. And even if the intention is something as noble as stable governance, the mechanism itself creates a universal dependence on that central scheduler's discretion. It removes your control over your own immediate liquidity. It takes away your ability to plan for your future.
It basically transforms your wealth from a fixed resource that you own
Into a conditional flow that someone else controls.
Okay, the second question is, and this one is maybe the most concerning, can they stop you from spending it on certain things?
This is the direct application of that programmability we were just talking about. The control here is restriction on purchases, and yeah, the implication is profound.
Because this power, it goes way beyond just policing existing laws, like
Yeah.
not being able to buy illegal things.
Way beyond. It allows the system to enforce politically or socially motivated restrictions in real time. For instance, if you exceed a certain carbon allowance score, your digital currency might just automatically refuse a transaction for a plane ticket.
Or for certain types of high emissions energy usage for your home.
Right. The system becomes an active, embedded regulator in every single aspect of your consumption. Lake really emphasizes that the power here resides entirely in the ability to tie your spending not just to what's legal, but to whatever is considered approved behavior and societal goals,
Yeah.
as defined by that central authority.
That is a fundamental change. It stops being just a financial system.
It becomes a compliance system that uses money as its primary tool for enforcement.
Okay, question number 3. This one focuses entirely on the cost of visibility. Can they monitor every transaction? If the answer is yes.
The control mechanism is the complete and total loss of financial privacy.
And we need to be really clear here. In a functional free market, privacy within existing tax law is the default state for most of your small day-to-day transactions.
But in a continuously monitored system, there is no such thing as private financial activity. Every cup of coffee you buy, every small payment you make to a friend, every digital tip you leave, it's all logged, analyzed, and scored by algorithms.
And Lake points out that this total transparency has this powerful chilling effect on how people behave.
A huge chilling effect. If you know that every single action is being audited and is contributing to this permanent profile of you, you immediately start adjusting your behavior. You try to avoid flagging the system or doing anything that might lower your score.
So it's a profound mechanism of self-censorship.
Exactly. Enforced by the simple omnipresence of the ledger. You don't even need an explicit threat. Just the knowledge that you're constantly being observed is enough to modify your behavior.
And what happens if that system detects non-compliance? If your profile or your transactions fall outside the accepted rules?
Well, that's where we hit the punitive lever. The fourth question is, can they freeze your account if you disobey rules?
And this is that immediate enforcement measure.
It is, and the rules here, we have to stress, are not limited to traditional criminal activity.
Right.
They could be compliance with public health mandates, adherence to newly established social norms, or even just expressing political views that are deemed disruptive by whoever is in charge.
And that whoever could be the current government, or it could be some promised quantum benefactor council. The structure is the same.
It is. The moment the system can unilaterally and instantly cut off your access to your own funds, Lake warns, it elevates financial control to the highest possible level of social and political leverage.
Your ability to even transact becomes a conditional privilege.
And that turns the financial system into the ultimate tool of policing.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because when we look at the final question, it encapsulates this entire shift in power.
It really does. The fifth and final question is, do you need permission to participate in the economy?
This represents that shift from what should be an inherent economic right.
To a conditional privilege.
In a truly free system, participation is just the default. You transact. You use whatever mutually accepted medium you hold.
Right. But if the answer to this final question is yes, it means the entire system is built like a gated community. Access can be revoked, it can be restricted, it can be conditioned upon you maintaining compliance with the central authority.
So every single economic action you take is conditional. It's conditional on your privileged status within this managed system.
You're a user, not an owner.
And if you apply this checklist, these 5 questions, to any proposed system, CBDCs, QFS, NESARA, even the Federal Reserve's current structure, and you check off all 5 of those boxes,
Which you often will.
the conclusion, according to Lake, is just.
Mm-hmm.
It's brutal and it's inescapable, he says. You are not free. You are financially supervised.
And this is why the structure completely overrides the aesthetic. NESARA might promise a debt jubilee, and QFS might promise digital gold, but if those systems require a central scheduling authority,
Check.
programmable money to manage the redistribution,
Check.
continuous monitoring of everyone who benefits,
Check.
identity checks to prevent fraud, and the ability to freeze accounts to enforce their new benevolent rules,
Check and check.
then they are structurally identical to the highly monitored CBDC model. The structure dictates the function, period.
The challenge for you, the listener, is to acknowledge that the stated goals of liberation, wiping out poverty or fixing climate change, are often so ambitious that they actually require the tools of absolute centralized financial supervision to implement them efficiently.
The new supervisor may have a beautiful moral justification, but they still require the leash.
And that brings us right to what Lake calls the big reveal in his analysis. Once that power structure is in place, once those 5 requirements are met, the identity of the management team becomes totally irrelevant to you, the individual on the receiving end.
It's an incredibly difficult thing for people to accept, but structurally, it's true.
It just does not matter, according to Lake, if the people running this system are the elites you currently despise and want to overthrow.
Or, on the other hand, the white hats you currently trust implicitly.
Or the patriots who promise to restore constitutional law.
Or the ascended masters offering cosmic guidance and high-frequency currency.
Or the quantum benefactors promising to digitally distribute untold wealth.
Or, yes, Lake's phrase, your grandma with a celestial debit card.
It doesn't matter who it is.
The analytical truth doesn't change. Control is control. The flavor doesn't change the function. We are constantly distracted by the flavor, the specific moral justification, the story about historical injustice, or the promises of a better future. But those things are simply the purpose for which the control is being applied.
They don't alter the underlying functional capacity of the system itself.
Not one bit. And we really need to dig into this concept of custodial control, because that's the true nature of any system that checks those 5 boxes.
So what does that mean, custodial control?
Custodial control means the individual is reduced from being an autonomous economic agent to being a supervised beneficiary. Someone else holds the keys, they hold the rules for access, they set the timing for your spending, and they have veto power over your economic choices.
So you're no longer the manager of your own wealth.
You are a user of funds that are managed by an overseer.
That's a colossal shift. It's a complete transformation of what money is. It goes from being a bearer instrument, something you physically own and control, like cash,
to being a conditional entry in a centrally managed ledger. In a truly free system, your wealth exists as a fact of possession. You hold it, it's yours. In a custodial control system, your wealth only exists as a continually revocable database entry.
But Lake's analysis forces us to ask that big structural question: why? Why do all these seemingly opposite ideological systems, from globalist banking proposals to these esoteric freedom movements, why do they all seem to coalesce around this exact 5-point architecture of control?
It's a great question, and the answer, as Lake suggests, is because when any group assumes the responsibility of governance, regardless of their ideology, their underlying operational goal is the efficient management and supervision of a large, complex population.
It's about efficiency.
It's all about efficiency.
Yeah.
And centralized, digital, programmable control mechanisms are simply the most efficient tools ever devised for ensuring mass compliance, for implementing large-scale policy changes.
Like universal debt forgiveness, or UBI.
Exactly. And for extracting or distributing resources swiftly. If a group promises a global system of debt forgiveness and equitable distribution, they have to have total visibility into the system, and they must have the ultimate ability to enforce the rules of that new distribution.
So to give everyone a fresh start, you first need a system of total control to manage that fresh start.
You have to. If funds are being distributed to, say, stabilize the global economy, the management team must have the power to monitor how those funds are spent. They have to ensure they're not used for something destabilizing like speculation. And, critically, they have to be able to revoke them if the beneficiary fails to meet the terms of the new social contract.
So the very ambition of the promised change, the sheer scale of the proposed liberation, it inevitably necessitates the adoption of the structural tools of efficient total supervision.
That's the paradox. They might swap the purpose of the control from serving, say, the current financial elite to serving environmental sustainability or social justice, but the mechanism they use to enforce that new purpose remains the same: surveillance, restriction, and conditional access.
The structural identity is the result of optimized efficiency, not a shared ideology.
Precisely.
So to help us, the listener, really internalize this critical difference between the architecture and the marketing, the author provided some specific high-value nuggets. These are designed to be instantly memorable summaries.
Yes, let's focus on Lake's comprehensive summary first. This is the one that should guide any formal analysis. It really isolates the 4 actions that define a system of supervision.
Okay, what's the key line?
Key line is, if a system can monitor, approve, restrict, or delay your access to money, then it is not economic freedom. It is custodial control, regardless of whether it is enforced by villains or marketed as liberation.
We should break down those 4 verbs again because they really are the litmus test. They're what you have to apply to every single proposal you hear.
Okay.
First, monitor. This eliminates privacy completely. It enables comprehensive scoring and real-time behavioral audits. If they can monitor you, they can score you.
Then, approve. This is the permission requirement. It transforms your spending from a right into a conditional privilege. If they have to approve your transaction, you are not sovereign.
Third, restrict. This limits your choice. It ties the financial system explicitly to behavioral compliance and social engineering goals. Restriction means the currency itself is inherently conditional.
And finally, delay. This gives the central authority power over your immediate liquidity, your survival. It generates dependence on the scheduler's timing and their discretion.
So the inclusion of any one of those 4 things, according to Lake, is a fundamental structural flaw if you're measuring a system against the idea of economic autonomy.
And the presence of all 4, which defines these functionally identical systems he's analyzing, creates the complete architecture of custodial control. The system is designed to shepherd its users, and the intent, whether it's benevolent or malevolent, that's just the flavor of the shepherding.
And then we get to what he calls the brutal sentence version. This is the core analogy that just sticks in your mind. It summarizes the dynamic of that supervisory relationship perfectly.
It's a powerful one.
Changing who holds the leash doesn't turn a leash into wings.
That statement is just. It's so concise and powerful because it defines the object itself, a leash. By its very definition, it implies constraint, it implies a handler, and it implies limits to free movement.
So if the system is architected as a leash, if it's built with those monitoring, restriction, and freeze functions, the identity of the person holding the handle is irrelevant to the experience of the person on the other end.
Exactly. If the white hats take the leash and they promise they will only lead you toward prosperity, you are still being led. The relationship remains one of supervision. True economic wings would require dismantling that central authority and dismantling the enforcement mechanisms, the monitor, restrict, freeze capabilities that make up the leash in the first place.
The structural transformation is what matters, not just changing the custodian.
That's the entire point.
Lake also recognizes that communicating this kind of insight can be tricky. You can sound like you're just dismissing people's hope. So he offers these concise, non-emotional ways of framing it for presentations or just conversations to clarify the structural critique.
Yes, they're very useful.
The first one he suggests is pretty straightforward. Same cage, new zookeeper.
It gets the point across immediately.
It does. It focuses directly on the structural enclosure. The architecture, those 5 core requirements we've been talking about, that is the cage. If those elements are still there, central authority, programmable money, total monitoring, the cage remains. Even if the new management promises better food and more humane treatment.
The possibility of restriction is still inherent in the design.
And the second framing is just as useful, especially for a more formal analysis, when governance changes but power structures don't.
This one forces you to pay attention to that infrastructural layer that exists underneath all the political slogans.
We're so used to governance changing, right? One political party replaces another. But Lake forces us to ask, has the infrastructure of control itself actually been replaced?
That's the real question. If the infrastructure grants absolute real-time control over every single financial decision, then a change in governance only alters the purpose for which that absolute control is used. It doesn't change the existence of that control.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
I think the essential learning from this deep dive is that if you are looking for genuine financial freedom, a system where you are an autonomous economic agent, you have to measure any proposed system, not by its utopian intentions, but by the measurable absence of central monitoring, centralized restriction, and permission-based requirements to transact.
It's about what's not there, as much as what is.
The ultimate challenge from Lake's analysis is this. The next time you encounter a new financial proposal, whether it's being heavily marketed by official sources or it's being whispered online by freedom groups, don't ask who is running it. Don't ask what they promised to fix. Pull out that 5-point checklist. Ask the structural questions.
Can they monitor every transaction? Can they freeze your account unilaterally? Can they restrict what you spend your money on? Do you need their permission to even participate? If the answer to these structural questions is yes, then you are not evaluating freedom. You are simply choosing your next supervisor.
This analysis really reveals a deeply rooted dynamic, which is that structural control is highly seductive. It's seductive to any group that assumes the responsibility of governing, regardless of their ideological purity. The architecture of total, efficient supervision is just. It's the path of least resistance for effective management and swift policy implementation.
That's a sobering thought.
It is, and it leaves us with a final provocative question that goes a little beyond Lake's immediate analysis. If every aspiring liberator, every group that criticizes the current system, eventually ends up adopting the exact same centralized, monitored, and restrictive architecture as the system they wanted to replace, is the desire for total financial control a fundamental and unavoidable feature of human governance itself?
A feature, not a bug.
A feature, not a bug of specific regimes. And if that's true, then maybe the only solution for true economic freedom lies not in changing the zookeeper, but in structurally engineering a financial system that makes the very concept of a central leash impossible to implement in the first place. And that remains the ultimate puzzle for anyone seeking genuine autonomy.